What is up, everyone? Welcome into the Fight HQ preview for UFC Vegas 66, the final UFC fight card of 2022. Pete, happy Friday afternoon, bro. How are we doing here on TJF?
Yeah, we're doing all right. I'm kind of sad that it's the final card of the year, but it is what it is, and hopefully the UFC continues to put out solid cards and great fights. And I don't know, I don't like any hiatus from mixed martial arts. You know this, and I feel like you're the same way. So I guess we're gonna have to just really pay attention to this card. Go a little heavier on this card because it's the final one of the year, and let's hopefully we can cash.
Yeah, you think about it. I think we're so used to just this, like, every Friday, every Saturday night that we've got a Bellator or UFC or PFL. The fact of, our next UFC event is not going to be till January 14th.
Yeah, that's a little too long in my book. That's a little too long. So it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, hopefully some other cards. You talked about the Bellator Rising card off air. That's something to kind of get us through, I guess. But it makes sense though from a promotional aspect. You don't want to have fights around the holidays. It's just not a good recipe for success.
No, it's not a good recipe for, especially on the regional side. You talk to any regional promoter, they'll let you know. Like you don't do events during Thanksgiving. And you don't do, like, I've had regional promoters say, I refuse to do events in the entire month of December.
Yeah. I mean, it's just up here in New England, right? Like, I had to help my dad when he was putting together shows and trying to navigate through the winter in general, like avoiding snowstorms, never mind holidays. So it's kind of just like the winter in New England's a nightmare. But yeah, that, just like anything, which days and times of the year are great for putting on events, and around the holidays it's just not it.
Of course, we're here to break down UFC Vegas 66 for you. The weigh-ins just completed just a couple of minutes ago. The only fighter to not make weight today was Maheshate. We'll talk about that fight a little bit later on the show. Then, of course, earlier today we learned that the Deron Winn Julian Marquez fight is off of this fight card. Deron Winn putting it on his I want to say it was either Twitter or Instagram, a concussion reason, so he's off that fight card. So you lose that matchup. And look, that was a fight that from a DFS perspective, Pete, I didn't think I was going to be very high on. I think probably the more interesting part of that was probably on the Julian Marquez side with everything that is going on with that one. But look, before we kind of start breaking down fight by fight here, when I first looked at the general fight card, my thought was like, hey, I think this is a pretty nice fight night card to end the year off with. It was surprising for me to see that Manel Kape was his second fight of this fight card. I was kind of surprised with that fight card lineup. And, then look, when I started to look at the DFS salaries in terms of this one, there were some fighters that I looked at that are, say below 8,200 and below. That's how, what, especially from a takedown upside. There are some fighters on this card like Saidyokub, to me, is one of those fighters on this card. He's 8,000 over on DraftKings, and he's $15 over on FanDuel. If he goes the takedown route, like, he's, to me, the perfect guy that when I'm over in Fantasy Cruncher developing groups and developing a takedown city group, that is something that I'm going to do. He's going to be one of those fighters I'm going to put in, because if he goes that route, which would be the route to go in that matchup, the ceiling could be super high for him.
Yeah, I mean, so we always like to target fighters with takedown upside, never mind underdogs with takedown upside. It just gives you a solid floor. And Saidyokub, in this matchup against Said Nurmagomedov, he needs to close the gap and press Nurmagomedov backwards. So immediately he needs to get in his face, because at range, I think that Nurmagomedov is too dynamic of a striker and too creative. So that creativity can lead to a knockout shot. So it's definitely possible for Nurmagomedov, but as far as being the better minute winner and the better fighter throughout the 15-minute contest, if it goes there, I just like the pressure of Saidyokub and how he needs to make it ugly, because on the outside in a pretty fight, I think Nurmagomedov picks him apart. In an ugly dogfight type of thing where you're testing the cardio, you're changing levels, you're making your opponent think in all aspects of mixed martial arts, that's where you can steal a victory over say Nurmagomedov, who has shown some glimpses of having a suspect gas tank. So I'm with you there. I like targeting underdogs with a takedown floor, even in a loss, right? Like it can come out and work for you. It's one of the most compelling fights on the entire card. I'm really focusing my attention on 2 fights from a constructive standpoint, and it's going to be the Arman Tsarukyan Damir Ismagulov fight and the Said Nurmagomedov and Saidyokub Kakharamonov fight. Obviously, the Kakharamonov and Nurmagomedov fight is a closely lined contest. You can make an argument for either one. As far as the Tsarukyan and Ismagulov, I think like the public perception is just like, Tsarukyan's the next, one of the best guys within the division and might be the guy to contend for the belt eventually. So I'm pretty big on Tsarukyan this week.
And of course, if you got any questions on the fights, leave those in chat. We will get to all your questions throughout this show. Of course, if you're just checking us out for the first time here on Fight HQ, this is myself and Pete's YouTube channel. If you can subscribe to the channel, we really would appreciate that. We've got a ton of support already, and of course, we're very grateful for everything that you guys do for us. And of course, you smash that like button. We do appreciate that. Of course, we're here on Fridays. Typically 2:00 East Coast time is when we're here. To break down the fight card. Of course, we will be live on Stochastic tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern time, to break this one down for you for those last minute questions you may have over there. But Pete, let's get right into it. Let's get right into the main event. As it pretty much is a pick'em fight. We're talking about Jared Cannonier and Sean Strickland, minus 110 on the betting odds on both sides. But the DraftKings odds are a little different. 8,500 for Sean Strickland, 7,700 for Jared Cannonier, and then over on FanDuel, $19 for Sean Strickland, $18 for Jared Cannonier. As I initially started thinking about this fight, Pete, my first thought is, okay, you got Sean Strickland coming off that knockout loss. How has he bounced back? And then also, I think about Sean Strickland, volume type guy, not a guy that, doesn't have that knockout power. I mean, he could win by knockout, but it's unlikely. But Jared Cannonier on the other side, man, he's got the power. Just a massive man. This is a guy who fought a heavyweight at one point, worked his way down to 205, now down at 185 pounds. It's a coin flip fight for me, Pete. I do lean Jared Cannonier in this one, and it's just because of that power, and maybe he potentially uses a little grappling in this one.
Yeah, so I'm, starting off the card, I think it's an interesting fight. The salaries versus the odds, it makes Jared Cannonier a good value, just because it's a pick'em fight, and he's so cheap in comparison to Sean Strickland, 7,700 versus 8,500. 5 rounds to work with. I think it's going to be a good kickboxing match. I really do. I trust Jared Cannonier's defense a little bit more than Sean Strickland. Reaches for shots a little bit. Obviously coming off a pretty devastating knockout to Alex Pereira, so we don't know how he's going to respond to that. Don't know how his chin is. Is it gone now? I think anybody that gets it with that left hook is going to go to sleep. And clearly even Israel Adesanya, can't really find an answer for that left hook of Pereira. So as far as Strickland Cannonier, I'm starting it off with an underdog. I like Jared Cannonier here. Not so much about the previous performance against Alex Pereira, but I just think that I can trust Jared Cannonier to stay wise defensively, compete on the feet. This is not a priority fight for me. I'm going to get to both sides. I really am, because if you look back, Sean Strickland, pretty solid takedown defense, and pretty good at out-voluming his opponents. Picking up a split decision over Jack Hermanson is kind of like, I know Jack is well-rounded and has improved his striking, but I feel like I was expecting a little bit more decisive of a victory there. And I think if it's a high-volume striking affair, I'm going to be leaning in Jared Cannonier, especially when he has the power edge. The Uriah Hall fight is the one where I kind of look out and I say, yeah, Uriah Hall is extremely dangerous, almost comparable to Jared Cannonier, and Strickland had a great performance in that one. Threw 428 significant strikes, landed 186, broke the slate, he scored 144 points. So with this all being said, I'm still picking Jared Cannonier just because I like him over 5 rounds a little bit more. And I actually think there's some sneaky KO upside, but you can make an argument for either one. I like the discount for Cannonier. I think it's much more likely that he pays off the price tag versus Sean Strickland sitting there at 8,500.
when you look over at the Prize Picks props this one, I think this kind of gives you an indication of how a good amount of people see this fight going. The fight time prop on this one for Sean Strickland is 22.5. Significant strike prop for Strickland 107.5, and for fantasy score 95.5. Look, if you tell me this thing goes 5 rounds, I like the more 107.5 significant strikes for Sean Strickland. You know, saying that fight goes 25 minutes, I think he will go north of that number. You know, the 22.5. I mean, I think it comes down to, from if you're attacking this from a Prize Picks aspect, if you're Sean Strickland, I really like, in terms of, I'm looking more at that significant strike and fight time prop, because those to me are, you know, things, if it goes 25 minutes, he should go north of that one. But to me, I'm looking at Jared Cannonier. If you look over on the props for this one, Jared Cannonier wins by TKO KO plus 250. I kind of like that one. I mean, I know, you know, sometimes, you know, we talk about maybe not chasing some plus money, you know, maybe you just take the minus 110, but I kind of do like that plus 250. Now, if you want to take Sean Strickland wins via decision, you're not getting a lot of value there, plus 180. So not too much value there, but I think if Sean Strickland wins this matchup, via decision is likely the method for it.
Yeah, not a lot of meat on the bone there. So what I really like is just kind of, you know, splitting my exposure from a DFS aspect. I do think this touches the later rounds, especially if Jared Cannonier can't land a devastating shot. And, you know, we have looked at Jared Cannonier's career. And, you know, he just went the distance with Israel Adesanya, distance with Kelvin Gastelum, distance with Robert Whittaker. Yes, he knocked out Derek Brunson, Jack Hermanson, Anderson Silva, David Branch. But I think that, you know, this probably touches the later rounds more often than not. I don't find it to be a priority. I could see a decision win where these guys score under 90 points. On the flip side, can you imagine just an absolute banger, a war, final card of the year? These guys go out there and they leave it on the line. And it's like a Glover Teixeira year Prohashka where both of them just have banana scores. And it's kind of, you know, I'm going to stack in a few, but I don't recommend it at all.
Yeah, I mean, looking at some of the questions we're getting in the chat, and of course, we appreciate those questions. Ty asking about our cash locks. Ty, we'll get to that towards the end of the show when we kind of break down the rest of these fights. Mr. Pyle says, do you think you have to have a piece of the main event for DFS? My answer would be no on that. I don't think it's not a priority for me this week, but I understand that, you know, if you want to get there, Cannonier, he's got the GPP upside because of knockout. Strickland, 25 minutes to work with, could land a lot of volume, but not really, he's not a takedown guy. So to me, it's not a priority.
Yeah, it's not a priority. It's pretty easy to land on the fight, though. Now, especially we lost the Marquez and Duran Win fight. One way or another, it's pretty easy to fall on a fight that you expect to almost go the distance, which could, you know, just lead to points within your lineup. So I'm going to get to it, and Jared Cannonier is going to be one of my most popular plays just because of the salary. But as far as like optimal fights, I don't view it as an optimal fight.
Lefty Shank says at 8,500, do you think Strickland is optimal if he wins via decision? Worried about him breaking 100 points.
My same exact concerns.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the question has got to be with Strickland, because everything's got to be on the feet, because he's not a takedown guy. And I would imagine if you went for a takedown, I don't think he gets Cannonier to the ground. So, right. I mean, you got to land a lot of volume for him to be able to pay off, you know, get 100 points, which is very possible. I mean, let's not act like it's not. But, you know, if there was some takedown upside, I would feel more comfortable with that.
Yeah, so like the Uriah Hall performance is like the outlier there in a decision where he scored 144 over 5 rounds through 428, landed 186. So following up against Jack Hermanson, I had pretty high expectations, right? Like I thought that he was going to go out there and, you know, get a big score one way or another. Perhaps the takedown upside and the grappling upside of Hermanson kind of made him a little gun shy on the feet. That's possible. This is going to be a kickboxing matchup, similar to the Uriah Hall fight, so perhaps I'll be surprised. But I have modest expectations from a fantasy score aspect.
Appreciate the question. If you got any questions, be sure to line those up in the chat. Of course, be sure to smash that thumbs up button. Do appreciate it. By the way, if you want to hear this on the podcasting platforms, let me know, and we'll make sure we'll get the show, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you do listen to podcasts. Pete, let's move over to the co-main event. And, man, it's an interesting matchup here of Arman and Damir. Arman, a minus 190 betting favorite, plus 164 Damir. 8,900 for Tsarukyan over on DraftKings. Ismagulov, he is 7,300, and then $19 and $11 respectively over there on FanDuel. This is, I like the main event. Main event's a high level 185-pound matchup. This is by far clearly my number 2 fight on the card. This is a great matchup the UFC's put together.
It's a fantastic matchup. I love it. Outside of the main event and co-main event, I don't know what the heck these guys at the UFC are doing when it comes to fight order. Like, I mean, you know, some of the fights that are on early prelims should not be there. They should be bumped up to the main card. I understand you want to put eyeballs on the prelims and all that, but like, goodness gracious, we'll get to the fight order. But it's like, why is this like on the prelims? So as far as this co-main event, I love it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. You have a guy who's undefeated in the UFC in Damir Ismagulov. I think he's been mediocre though. From he clearly hasn't found a finish. Split decision in his most recent against Guram Kutateladze, and then you have 4 decisions over Rafael Alves, Thiago Moises, Joel Alvarez, and Alex Georgis. I love the upside of Arman Tsarukyan here. I really do. I think this kid is one of the best fighters, top 3 within the division. I'm not even kidding. So I am going to be all about Arman Tsarukyan this week. This is one of the most prioritized fights on the card, even though it's one of the most highly skilled fights. You have Tsarukyan now in a 3-round atmosphere. I think we're going to see him absolutely break onto the scene here, as long as he can avoid the power of Ismagulov.
When you look over at Prize Picks, 2 props for Tsarukyan, significant strikes landed 45.5, fantasy score 82.5. What's your thoughts on that significant strike prop?
It's interesting, right? Because like, I think Damir's chances are clearly better if it's a striking matchup. I'm expecting Tsarukyan to mix things up. He has dynamic striking as well. He could head kick Damir and knock him out. He could hit him with a big hook and knock him out. We've seen Rafael Alves knock down Damir Ismagulov. I wouldn't be surprised to see him just go to the path of least resistance, and that's incorporating takedowns. Damir's very good in that aspect as well. But when you take down Islam Makhachev and you take down almost everybody you've gone against, I think that Arman's the clearly better wrestler here, and the wrestling volume could break down Damir over time. So I'm going to be a little underweight to the striking output. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is nullified and it's a striking matchup because of Damir's defensive skills. But I love the upside of Arman, especially from a takedown aspect, which could lower the significant strike totals.
Mr. Paul asking about our favorite GPP underdogs for DFS. We'll get to that throughout the show. I will tell you, Jared Cannonier would be one of the ones that I would put in there. Like if you're creating, say you're in a lineup optimizer like a Fantasy Cruncher, you're creating groups, and say one of those groups is underdog. Jared Cannonier to me would be one of those fighters in there. We'll get into some other underdogs that I do like as we go on throughout the show. Let's move on to our next matchup. We got Amir Albazi taking on Alejandro Costa. For Albazi, this is now his 3rd opponent for this fight card. Initially supposed to take on Alex Perez. Perez withdraws. Then he's supposed to take on Brandon Royval. Royval withdraws due to an injury. Now he takes on Costa here. Albazi, a big betting favorite on this one, and minus 450 betting favorite, plus 350 for Costa on the other side. 9,600 and 6,600 over on DraftKings, and then 23-8 over there on FanDuel. Albazi, I mean, obviously a big favorite. I feel like he's going to be a top of the ticket kind of guy. Just, people are going to look at him as a parlay piece here this week.
Yeah, I'm not doing it. And I'm not saying that Costa's going to win. But the price is pretty high from a DraftKings standpoint. And it's very restrictive at 9,600. If Costa had a full camp, which he doesn't, but if he did, I think that this fight is clearly mispriced. He should be a lot closer than it is. The odds are just too wide, in my opinion, and it does not reflect the skills of Costa. Alessandro Costa is very good at jiu-jitsu, very good at striking, very good at getting people down, I do think that he can be outworked from a cardio aspect, and that's where a guy in Amir Albazi can really shine. He's looked good in the UFC, but I don't look at Amir Albazi and think like championship caliber. I think that he's top 10, but not championship. I think he's good. So I get the price, but I think that's more reflective on somebody just accepting it on short notice. And a lot of these guys that the UFC that calls up have been training, have been ready. You should be training all the time, so you don't have to get ready. But I got to tell you that Alessandro Costa, from a punt perspective, I did it last week and it worked out with Stephen Kozlow. In a loss, I think can give you a decent floor because it's going to be an action-packed fight. I don't expect Albazi to go out there and submit him as quickly as he did over Francisco Figueiredo, as he did over Malcolm Gordon. I think he's clearly the better fighter here, and he's probably going to score 100 points. But there's other fighters that are going to score 100 points that are a lot cheaper. So I'm getting to Alessandro Costa from complete punt. Give me 35 to 50 points in a loss because I think he has takedown upside, reversal upside, knockout upside in a normal matchup, not a short notice matchup. But at 6,600, Jason, like we're not talking 69. We're talking 6,600. Like that is ridiculous. He needs 45 points. And then I can spend up and get to 5 other people that can give me 100 plus points. So, yeah, I'm okay with getting to Alessandro Costa. But let's also talk about how last week we had Simon get dominated in round 1 against Stephen Kozlow and then come back in rounds 2 and 3 and put it on Kozlow, eventually getting him out of there and still broke the slate. Well, he didn't break the slate, but he scored like 118. So, like, that's still a really damn good score. So, I'm going to get to both sides. But what I'm saying is that the underdog is just so cheap. If nobody's getting to him, I'm just going to do it from a build standpoint.
I mean, kudos to my guy, Pete the Heat there in the Haymaker, 3 points away from that optimal lineup, which you had Stephen Kozlow in that lineup. It just shows that sometimes if you can find these right under 7K options that can get some points, and you know, I mean, if he takes a DQ in the second round, you know, you probably took down that contest there. You know, just looking at the optimal last week in the Haymaker, which did have a fighter in a loss, Jared Gordon, scoring 58 points. The optimal lineup was Gordon, Duplessis, Rosenstruck, Topuria, Billy Q, and TJ Brown. I had a good lineup going into it, and then unfortunately Jay Perrin and Bryce Mitchell just crapped the bed for me. But it was still made money last week, so it's always a good thing when you can make some money on a Saturday night.
Yeah, oh man, it was a great week for me. Happy that you could make any money at all. Never mind, you know, basically having the best lineup out there, and Gordon over Kozlow was the play. But I just, again, Gordon it was a close fight, but I thought that he clearly won the fight. Kozlow looked really good. And then the short notice nature, getting hit and brutalized, the cardio kind of abandoned him. If he accepts that DQ, then the whole slate's completely different. But, you know, getting to somebody that's so cheap can just provide you with so much upside because you're allowed to spend else, and when nobody's getting to them too, you know what I mean? Like when you have all these builds with some of these complete punt plays and less than 5% of the field has them, it's just like, okay, if they have points galore, then 6,600, it's just so damn embarrassing cheap. Yeah, so I'm gonna do the same thing this week. I'll tell you what though, I wasn't really high on TJ. I was high on TJ Brown. I told you earlier in the week that I like TJ Brown a lot. Then I got off it and I kind of was overthinking a little bit. That is one of my few lineups I had with TJ Brown. So luckily it came through for me because I went a little bit too heavy on the unknown guy in Eric Silva.
Yeah, no question about it. And I mean, look, that's why we're developing those lineups. We're trying to figure out what we can do there. By the way, Albazi over on Prize Picks, significant strikes landed 40.5, fight time 10, takedowns 2, fantasy score 112.5. Any of those jump out to you?
I think it's going to be like a scramble city, so I'll probably say more on the takedowns. I expect his opponent to get back to his feet. I expect Costa to initiate in some grappling as well, which could lead to more reversals, more activity, especially in a high work rate weight class. So I'll probably take the over on the takedowns.
Let's move on. Next up, we got a matchup between Alex Caceres and Julian Erosa. Julian Erosa, a minus 170 betting favorite, plus 145 for Bruce Leroy. And over on DK, 8,800 for Erosa, 7,400 for Alex, and then 17 and 13 respectively over on FanDuel. I talked to Julian about 2 weeks ago at this point, and one of the things that I thought was really interesting, the two things was A, this is a matchup he has wanted for some time. B, really? He worked with the 18-year-old kid Raul last week, the past couple weeks, to get ready for Alex because he knows. I mean, look, Alex is going to want to get on his back. But the other thing that really stuck out to me about what Julian said is, like when I think of Julian Erosa, I think of an action fighter, a guy that, I mean, look, he's going to take chances in fights, but he's an exciting fighter. And beginning the conversation, we were talking about the last 3 years for him. He gets a third shot in the UFC, which really never happens. And, he's won 5 of his last 6 fights. And, he talked about the fact of going out there and, essentially paraphrasing what he said is fighting smarter, taking the opportunities when they're there as opposed to maybe taking some risks in there. And, this is a matchup I was kind of surprised in the fight booking here. Especially after coming off that win against Dawodu, I thought Julian Erosa maybe get someone higher up here. As long as this doesn't become a grappling matchup, I like Julian Erosa. And I'll tell you, if you like the significant strikes prop on Prize Picks right now, 72.5, go play it right now because I think that thing's going to keep climbing and climbing as we get into tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that is going to be a much more volume striking matchup. If the grappling does happen, I actually think Erosa's good enough offensively to pose some risks for Alex Caceres here. Defensively, you have to worry about Caceres taking your back because his rear naked choke is just really, really good. Working with Raul Rosas, I think, will prepare you for that. Little interesting fight. You know what I mean? Like, I can't really plant a flag and say that I am confident in Julian Erosa. He scored 96 against Hakeem Dawodu. 111 over Steven Peterson and 101 over Charles Jourdain, 3rd round submission in that one. I can't tell you that I'm confident in Julian Erosa just because I know that it's he's a little volatile at times. Mm-hmm. He can run into a shot. Yes, he's starting to fight smarter and working towards his strengths, which is great. But that chin has been taxed a lot, mm-hmm. and I don't necessarily think it takes a power puncher to expose that. Alex Caceres is not a knockout guy, but he is a little deceiving with his angles and his strikes, and it's always the shots that you don't see coming that kind of plant you on your backside. So I'm going to be picking Julian Erosa, but it's not really confident. Like, I'll get to Alex Caceres from a complete long shot play in hopes that he can take the back. I mean, he does have a victory over Sung Woo Choi, and whenever he's able to mix in the grappling, that's when he's very, very dangerous. His elusive footwork and solid striking can pose problems for a lot of people. And if Erosa goes in there and kind of has those old tendencies, he could run into a check hook. But I like the pressure out of Julian Erosa in the work rate. So give me Erosa to win. Not necessarily sure if I love it from a DFS standpoint. I can see this being one of two ways, right? Like, you need it, or it's kind of just like, the footwork negates some of the scoring.
I mean, great comment from Mr. Plow. Rosa's been the definition of a boom or bust fighter, no question about it. I mean, he's a guy that, throughout his time, even though when he was saying to me, he's like, hey, I'm being more tactical in terms of when I make these decisions, when maybe you throw a flying knee out there. And also I thought it was really interesting. He talked about, of being in Vegas and, he goes to 10th Planet to work on jiu-jitsu. And he said, some of the best work you get in is with like these 16, 17, 18-year-old kids who they've been doing jiu-jitsu since they were like 6, 7, 8 years old. And he essentially said, sometimes you get better roles out of going on with that person as opposed to maybe, that 30-year-old who's only been doing jiu-jitsu for 5 years or so.
Yeah, I mean, I said something similar to you last week when people were kind of questioning Raul Rosas. Is he ready? Yeah, we still had questions about him for sure. But I can tell you from firsthand experience that a lot of my training at Hanzo Gracie, Rhode Island, and, the young phenoms, man, like, when they've been doing, these mixed martial arts or martial arts from such a young age, especially in the jiu-jitsu standpoint, like some of my best preparation is with those guys. That all they do is they just do jiu-jitsu. So yeah, I'm in complete agreement with Julian Erosa. I'm expecting him to get another win here, but Alex Caceres, notoriously known for spoiling fights for kind of constantly picking up wins when he shouldn't. The Sadiq Youssef one did not happen. Sadiq was just clearly the better fighter in that, but Alex Caceres is a tough out, and anybody that underestimates him can actually be surprised and submitted relatively easily. So give me Julian Erosa in the matchup though.
Erosa's never lost via submission, which
Correct.
is why Alex Caceres is plus 1,000 to win via submission. Kind of a little bit of a crazy prop when you think about what Alex does best. The fact that you're getting 10-1 odds there. I generally feel like this fight's probably going to go 15 minutes. That's where I'm kind of concerned about the 8,800 price tag for Julian Erosa potentially cashing off here. I will say this, like the one prop over Prize Picks outside of the significant strike prop that sticks out to me is a takedown prop. 1.5 for Julian Erosa. Like if I'm Erosa, I can maybe you see you take a fight down maybe at the end of the round, maybe kind of secure a little bit there, but like my overall thought is I'd much rather play less than 1.5 than more than 1.5.
It all comes down to how the fight's going, right? Like Erosa has the ability to mix things up. If he's struggling to find Alex Caceres, I think that could be his way of like entangling him, is just kind of just crashing forward, getting underhooks and working towards a takedown to kind of like win back the round, especially if Caceres is the matador and Erosa is the bull. If he's doing fine on the feet, I don't think he'll go to that well, because that is clearly the most dangerous path going up against Caceres' skills on the mat. So that might be, well, you can't do it live. I was going to say, imagine if you could do props live like that would be great.
Yeah.
But that's kind of something I might stay away from, just because it all depends on the success of Julian Erosa in the matchup.
Let's move over. Next up, we got a matchup that I'm really interested to watch. I think this thing's going to go 15 minutes. I think it's going to be fun, and it wouldn't shock me if these guys just never hit the ground. That's Drew Dober and Bobby Green. Drew Dober, a minus 155 betting favorite, plus 130 for Bobby Green. 8,600 for Dober on DraftKings, 7,600 for Bobby Green, then 17 and 14 respectively for Bobby Green, and Bobby Green $14, Drew Dober at $17. I mentioned over in Discord last night, someone asking about some value plays underneath 8,000. In terms of a cash value play, I don't mind getting to Bobby Green. I would be relatively surprised if this fight doesn't go 15 minutes.
I like Bobby Green. I like Bobby Green a lot. I really do. Clearly there's concerns anytime somebody's coming off a suspension or a layoff or anything like that. But Bobby Green, to me, is a very difficult fighter to fight, because his hands are low, so his punches come from odd angles. His movement is great. The issue is he kind of fights to his opponent's level at times, which makes the fights extremely close. One of the best bets you could have backed throughout Bobby Green's career is the decision props, the split decision props, all of that, because he invites his opponents into close, fights, and loses unanimous decisions, split decisions. I do think that he is the more well-rounded of the two. That may be a hot take, maybe not. I think that Drew Dober lacks in the wrestling department and clearly in the grappling and submission skills. I think that Bobby Green can incorporate takedowns if the fight is really close. Now, does he choose to do so? I think for the most part, no. But Drew Dober hits really hard, and if Dober starts to connect with that left hand, you could see Bobby Green go, okay, I'm going to mix in some takedowns just to kind of solidify everything. And I think you can look back at previous matchups, and MMA math does not work out. But from what I saw in the Brad Riddell Drew Dober fight, I think that Bobby Green can replicate that, if not make it a more decisive victory. We have seen Bobby Green go to the takedown wall in the past, landed 2 out of 3 against Thiago Moises, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, absolutely talented on the mat. Like, he's gone three attempts over Clay Guida, 3 over Alan Patrick, 6 over Alan Patrick, 3 over Lando Venata. So I think that's kind of just like a way to solidify a round, and I like the volume, and I think that Bobby Green from an underdog standpoint, I'm going to get to him. There was a point where he was looking absolutely on fire within the division. Look at the fight against Rafael Fiziev. And even against Thiago Moises, he scored 52 and 57 in defeats. So I just like his ability to get a safe floor for us. And I do think that in a striking matchup, when he doesn't have to worry about getting taken down, you can see some good upside from Bobby Green.
It's more of a cash play for me than it would be a GPP play. Sean asking thoughts on over 2.5 as a play. Yeah, I like that over 2.5. It's minus 186. That to me is, I mean, look, I think it's going 15 minutes. I mean, I just, that's where I would look at, like, if you want to look at the decision process, Bobby Green wins via decision plus 200, plus 225 for True Dober. Here's the one negative thing I have about Bobby Green. He likes to talk to the officials and the judges to act like when he gets hit that it didn't hurt. Yeah. And it's like, Bobby, you just literally just told the judge you got hit good.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. It's almost like a stamp on any time he gets hit. I mean, Nur Hayir, thanks for the comment. He said, Bobby Green won't go wrestling. I don't think it's likely that he does. I just think he has the option, whereas Drew Dober doesn't have the option. Drew Dober's not going to take down Bobby Green or have any success on the mat. I just think Bobby Green can go to that well if he gets hurt on the feet, especially. And sometimes, damage forces your hand to resort to other tactics. And Drew Dober hits really, really hard, and not a lot of people are comfortable striking with him. But I just think from a floor standpoint, I think Bobby Green's going to kind of outstrike him and coast to a decision win, priced at 7,600.
Let's move on to a middleweight matchup. You got Michal Oleksiejczuk taking on Cody Brundage. Cody Brundage stepping up here. I want to say he took this fight probably about 2 weeks ago. I want to say, of course, he was supposed to fight a couple weeks ago. That fight does not happen when his opponent pulled out on Monday of fight week. Did not get a new fight here. Oleksiejczuk a minus 280 betting fair, plus 230 for Cody Brundage. Oleksiejczuk 9,400 over on DK, 6,800 for Brundage, 22-9 over there on FanDuel. I mean, look, the thing, like we talk about Cody Brundage, and he does have a wrestling background. That's how he came into mixed martial arts. And I saw Cody put something on Instagram the other day of like, it was just 3 years ago he took his first fight, and you think about just where he's progressed to his career. But the one thing, even though he won the Dolce fight,
yeah,
that's one of those fights that I think that, and we'll talk about some other fighters later on the show, where they have these fights where things don't go well in a fight, and it's kind of something you just don't forget. And I feel like this is one of those fights where you just never forget about. If Dolce just sits there and stands up, he probably stops Cody Brundage on the feet, goes for a takedown, Cody catches him in guillotine, and it's his night. Oleksiejczuk, I mean, look, to me, it's Oleksiejczuk play in terms of this one. And to me, it's just more of, I'm looking at saying, okay, how does Cody win this fight?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I look at Michal Oleksiejczuk as a massive step up in competition for Cody Brundage. A decision loss to Nick Maximov, the submission win over Dolce, even though it was one of the most ugly performances ever. He kind of Homer Simpson his way into a nice submission win, let his opponent just beat the hell out of him, and then, captured the neck when Dolce made a clear fight IQ mistake. The Tresean Gore one is, I got to give it to him. That's a nice victory. It really is. So, Tresean Gore, somewhat of a busted prospect, but with the correct coaching staff, Tresean Gore looked good in his previous matchup. Michal Oleksiejczuk is very, very up and down, but whenever he's able to press forward, he presses forward all the time, but he really makes fighters want out. They start looking for the exit, and the quick KO win over Sam Alvey, Shamil Gamzatov, like that's exactly what I can see happening. And when you get completely battered against Dolce Lugambula, it's lined like Michal Oleksiejczuk should go out there and get a round one victory. He's one of my favorite 9,000 options from a quick finish perspective, but I have to also be a little cautious because of the deficiencies within his ground game. The best path to beat Oleksiejczuk is put him on his backside, and I think that Cody Brundage has the skills to do that. It's just, can he pick a submission win up? Maybe. I don't really see it. Yes, he captured a guillotine, but from top control, I don't know. Can he get some good ground and pound en route to a finish? Sure. Heavy hips. But I do think that Oleksiejczuk's going to go in there and get rid of Cody Brundage. But I kind of circled this fight. I feel like it has sneaky GPP upside, and I want to get to, a little bit pieces of Cody Brundage and more so the Michal Oleksiejczuk from a solid 9,000 option.
You mentioned about that first round upside. Both these guys have first round upside. Cody Brundage, 2 of his 3 UFC fights have ended in the first round. 5 of Michal's 9 UFC fights have ended in the first round. So there is that upside there. And I think that's when you look at the Prize Picks props, I think that's Prize Picks kind of feels like that's the way it's going to go when you're talking about the Oleksiejczuk props. 33.5 Steve strikes landed, a 6.5 fight time, and then 106.5 number in terms of fantasy score. I typically don't attack that fantasy score. Fantasy score might be a way to attack Michal Oleksiejczuk this week, or maybe probably the safer option of those 3 props would probably be going the less than 6.5 fight time minutes.
Yeah, I agree with that. I expect this to be chaos in round 1. And chaos can lead to mistakes and early finishes clearly. So I like the less on the fight time for sure. Of those picks, that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, Mr. Pyle, we'll get into your question towards the end of the show. And then another question about this is arm fight will be close. I'm going to sprinkle some of that fight goes to split decision. I don't mind that prop bet.
Yeah.
And of course, sometimes you never know what these judges are looking at. And last week
gosh, I know. I mean, think about it. Some poor scorecards last week really shaped the slate, and that's how it is every week, where you just need to have a good bounce. And luckily for me, I avoided the bad bounces. Would have been better if Kazo picked up the DQ win, but it is what it is. And I was really happy with how last week went, and hopefully for the final card of the year, we get some good bounces.
Let's move over. Next up, we got a female matchup. You got Cheyanne Vlismas taking on Cory McKenna. Cheyanne minus 190 betting favorite in this one, plus 160 for McKenna. And then Cheyanne 9,000 over on DK, 7,200 for Cory, and then $18 and $12 respectively over there on FanDuel. Had a interesting interaction last night over in the Stochastic Discord with one of the subscribers who I guess best way to say he didn't like my analysis of calling Cory McKenna a value, play underneath 8,000. And it's all about the takedowns. And, we mentioned about Cody Brundage and not being able to get that Dolce fight out of your mind. And for me, for Cheyanne, it goes back to that Ruiz fight where, you have a fighter who literally has one way to take you down and constantly takes you down with a head and arm throw. And, I mean, look, if this fight stays on the feet, this is Cheyanne's fight to lose. No question about it. But for Cory McKenna, there is a clear path to victory here, and it is going, for the takedowns.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it at all, getting to 7,200 Cory McKenna. Just from a takedown aspect, I think that she's capable. She attempted 7 against Elise Reed. She landed 3. She attempted 4 against Miranda Granger. She landed 3. I think she's going to need more, though, if she wants to have success against Cheyanne Vlismas here. The more, the better. Clearly, that's going to be taxing when it comes to your cardio. But I think that attempting only 4 is not going to be enough because Vlismas will be wise to some of them. And whenever I have a closely lined fight in my mind of how I think, yes, this is women's MMA, on any given day we could see buys. Vlismas or McKenna walk away with the victory. I start to really take into account the camps. And I think that I'm going to be siding with Vlismas here. I don't hate the Cory McKenna underdog call. I'm going to get to her a little bit from a takedown aspect and a submission aspect. If she gets an advantageous position, unlike other fighters on the card, I think that she has a decent chance to finish. But I think I'm buying into Cheyanne Vlismas from a striking aspect, a growth aspect. Not in love with the price tag at 9,000 though. I'm really not in love with the price tag. I think this is going to go 15 minutes, which makes McKenna much more appealing than Vlismas. But I'm going to be siding with Vlismas here at 9,000.
Yeah, I mean, when I look over those Prize Picks props, the 2 takedowns for Cory McKenna does stick out to me. If I'm playing a side, I'm playing more in terms of because she does have, she's added reach disadvantage. I want to say it's 5 inches reach disadvantage. in this one, I mean, look, for Cheyanne, she's going to want to keep this fight range. I mean, to me, the problem, and you mentioned about that price tag, is okay at 9,000. I need 110 points. What is the path if she doesn't get some takedowns or knockdowns?
Yeah, I think the path for Cheyanne Vlismas is clearly to test that chin of Cory McKenna. I think McKenna has been pretty open throughout her career of how she struggled with concussions, which is not something that you want to hear when you're going to back somebody. But that can go one of two ways. Somebody's cognizant that they have concussion issues and they know they need to minimize damage. That should result in more grappling, which makes Cory McKenna as an underdog play make a ton of sense. On the flip side, it makes Cheyanne Vlismas a little interesting because she has shown pretty good accuracy, pretty good volume, pretty good striking skills. And if McKenna's unable to get the takedown, I do think a fighter in Vlismas can test that chin. So, I mean, we need a knockout or several knockdowns en route to a high volume affair. Like, knockdowns are great too. We don't need early finishes. She's already picked up one knockdown, and that was against Gloria De Paula, which resulted clearly in a finish. So she scored 135 in that situation. But talk about high volume striking affair with a couple knockdowns. You know, you could have a fighter still at 9,000 end up making it into the optimal lineup. So I'm making a few lineups to account for that.
Mr. Plowman, I appreciate the comments there. What I'll do is, since you say you primarily listened to us over at Apple Podcasts, I'll get this show up on Apple Podcasts here this afternoon. So if you can't catch all the show here on YouTube, we'll have it up on Apple Podcasts. We'll have it on Spotify. Be sure to just follow us on Twitter. I'm at Jason_Floyd. Pete is at Pete the Heat MMA. We'll tweet out those links when the show is up on the podcasting platform. Of course, you can check it out in video form right here on YouTube as well. Kevin, he says he showed up late to the party. Tell me we're on some of the same dogs. By the way, we haven't got to Brian Battle, Maheshate, Saidyokub. We have talked a little about Bobby Green. That is an underdog that is intriguing for me. It's more of a cash game play in terms of a DraftKings aspect. But if you're looking to just bet the fights, I don't mind that Bobby Green call. Let's move over. Next up, we got Jake Matthews taking on Matthew Semelsberger. Jake Matthews, nearly a 3-1 betting favorite in this one, minus 280, plus 230 for Semelsberger, 9,200 for Jake on DraftKings, 7,000 for Matthew, and then $21 and $10 respectively. You know, Pete, when I saw this, my first thought was the betting odd kind of did jump out to me a little bit. But then as you kind of take a deeper dive and I say, okay, who's Matthew Semelsberger's best win against?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's AJ Fletcher, even though AJ Fletcher hasn't done a damn thing in the UFC. I believe that AJ Fletcher has, excellent skills. But I think this is another massive step up in competition. Like, you have Jake Matthews, who has, grown up in the UFC, knocked out Andre Fiallo and completely changed my mind of him. Like, he looked fantastic in that bout. He looked like a fighter who developed his striking and clearly improved. In addition, he's always been a pretty dominant grappler, a guy that can get top position, and when he gets top position, he wreaks havoc on his opponents. Anthony Rocco Martin submitted him, Sean Brady submitted him, but outside of that, James Vick submitted him as well. But I think that we're seeing Jake Matthews look better than ever. So I'm pretty big on Jake Matthews. I like him here to win the bout. At 9,200, we need takedowns or we need a finish. And Semelsberger has, been pretty durable in the AJ Fletcher fight. That was why I liked AJ Fletcher, is landing takedowns. He just kind of got out scrambled and wasn't up to par in the cardio department. So I think that Jake Matthews will walk away with the victory here. But Semelsberger is one of the guys that kind of surprised me inside the UFC. It's against low-level opposition for the most part, but he's looked good. I mean, when you knock people out the way he knocks people out, and then you score 50-something points against Alex Morono, that's a really good fight. The AJ Fletcher one, where he squeaks out a decision and scores 62, I think that's going to show you that he can struggle from bottom position when he gets controlled on the mat.
I talked about that. I'll create a takedown city group over a Fantasy Cruncher. Jake Matthews is one of those guys is going in that group. When you see AJ Fletcher get the 4 takedowns the way he did, I'm sitting there going, if you're Jake Matthews and you're his corner, That's got to be the clear mindset in this matchup. It has to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great to, incorporate it. He's attempted 11 in the past, 7 against Emil Meek. So, like, priced at 9,200, we need a lot of control time, a lot of takedowns en route to a finish or just a dominant victory. But, yeah, I like Jake Matthews to win the bout. I just think he's going to be the vet in this situation when he's usually the young guy. And, that experience is going to be on full display.
Let's move over to Pete's favorite fight of the weekend. Well, it's his favorite fight every weekend because it's the 8,200, 8,000 fight over on DraftKings. You got Saeed Nurmagomedov plus 100, 8,200 and $15 on FanDuel, taking on Saidyokub Kakharamonov, who is minus 120, 8,000 on DK, $15 over there on FanDuel. And Saidyokub is one of the guys that he's clearly going in the Takedown City group on Fantasy Cruncher because that is the clear path. Look, people will see the last name. They're not related. They just have the same last name. They're not related. There is a clear path for Saidyokub here. And to me, it's just a matter of whether he's able to incorporate or not. If you tell me he can go that takedown, we saw him get 10 takedowns in his last matchup. If he can replicate that, oh man, yeah, this is the guy that I want to get to this week.
Yeah, I love this fight. One of the most compelling on the entire card. And clearly one of the closest fights lined. 8,200 for Nurmagomedov, 8,000 for Kakharamonov. I think that Saeed Nurmagomedov is dynamic enough to land a knockout shot. And we have seen Saidyokub Kakharamonov get hit with a flying knee on the regional scene and get knocked out. But not too many people can, brush off a flying knee to the chin. So I will always sprinkle in both sides of the 8,200, 8,000. But it was a little worrisome in the most recent bout against Douglas Silva de Andrade. I thought Nurmagomedov was going to go out there and really dominate. And Douglas Silva de Andrade is a guy that I've loved from an underdog standpoint. Dangerous striker, good jiu-jitsu, older guy, but super, super live to pull off upsets. And coming off that Cody Stamann round 1 victory, scoring 117, and then following before that against Mark Striegel round 1 KO, 122. I liked what I saw from Nurmagomedov, and I'm like, yep. He's going to get a finish over Douglas Silva de Andrade. He actually got hit with a spinning back fist. He actually got taken down also in that bout. And it showed a little bit, some deficiencies within his game. He only scored 59 fantasy points in that matchup. Granted, styles make fights. But within this matchup, I like Saidyokub Kakharamonov to be the better fighter over 15 minutes. If it goes 15 minutes, I think the work rate, the pressure, just the volume of everything from strikes to takedowns attempted to control time against the cage, I think everything is going to be in Saidyokub's favor. But on the outside, if this is a pretty fight from range, Saeed Nurmagomedov is dynamic enough and skilled enough to have the variety of attacks to threaten and knock out Saidyokub Kakharamonov with something he doesn't see coming. So for me, Kakharamonov, 8,000. I actually will say, probably going to be one of my most exposed fighters on the slate just because of the upside, the salary, and it's a close fight. And I just like his skills in every single department, especially when he's the better minute winner of the two.
Yeah, it's to me, Saidyokub is a guy that I'm going to be targeting, and it's all because of that takedown. We talk about it on DraftKings all the time. We're looking for guys that can get the fight to the ground, keep it on the ground, rack up the control time, and you hope that their opponent can get back to the feet just so they can take them right back to the ground. So Saidyokub will be kind of a core play for me, and particularly in cash tomorrow here for UFC Vegas 66. Let's move over. Next up, we got Rafa Garcia taking on Maheshate. Maheshate did miss weight by 2.5 pounds. So just kind of searching around. It looks like the fight is going to proceed as a catchweight matchup here. Maheshate plus 120, Garcia minus 140, 8,400 for Garcia over on DraftKings, 7,800 for Maheshate, and then 16 and 14 respectively over there on FanDuel. Look, it's when a fighter misses weight, it's kind of a case by case basis here. Before the missing weight here, my kind of thought was with Rafa Garcia was him to utilize grappling.
Yeah, I think he needs to. I don't think that Rafa Garcia is a good striker. I think that he's mediocre at best. His best work is done when he's able to chain takedowns together. and he can drag anybody to the mat constantly. And if they get back up, he can do it again. So his mat returnability is some of the best on the entire slate. My issue is the knockout potential that his opponent Maheshate has. He's a big guy for the division. I think this could be a strategic move. Obviously, I don't know the ins and outs of their camp, but a striker that wants to keep it on the feet, weighing in a little bit heavier, could actually help to keep it on the feet against Rafa Garcia. If he's nursing an injury, that's not good. I think I can't trust either one of these fighters. I view this fight as like a GPP priority. I think a lot of people are going to agree one way or another that you need one of these guys. Either Maheshate plants a beautiful right cross on Rafa Garcia's chin and knocks him out, something that hasn't been done in the UFC thus far, despite going up against Nasrat Haqparast, Chris Gruetzemacher, Natan Levy, Jesse Ronson, and Drakkar Klose. I'm going to be picking Rafa Garcia. I just trust him more than the unknown Maheshate. Yeah, Maheshate could knock out Rafa Garcia, but up until this point, I've seen, Rafa in there with some talented fighters, and you tell me he attempts or has the ability to attempt 11 or 12 takedowns as he has done against Drakkar Klose, Natan Levy, and Chris Gruetzemacher. It's going to be a little difficult for Maheshate to defend all of them. So I think we could see Rafa Garcia break the slate. But one way or another, I'm going to be getting exposure to this one because I just have a gut feeling that this is going to be a part of the optimal lineup.
Next up, we got a matchup between Battle and Hanat, a minus 150 betting favorite, plus 125 for Battle, and then 8,300 for Hanat over on DK, 7,900 for Brian, and then 16 and 14 respectively here. Hanat is another guy that I look at as potential takedown city candidate.
Yeah, I mean, another one, right? Like the Rafa Garcia Maheshate fight, I don't really trust the Hanat Fakhretdinov or Brian Battle fight. We have Brian Battle stepping up on short notice, talented in all areas of the fight. Probably the better striker of the two, if I have to tell you. Hanat Fakhretdinov, super wild, super reckless, very sloppy fighter. His best work is done when he's able to take his opponents down, work in top control, establish a position, ground and pound. I think we could see him pick up a win here at 8,300. My issue is if Battle's able to keep it on the feet, expose those deficiencies within his striking game. I think the sloppiness could actually result in Hanat getting finished one of these days. I just don't know if Brian Battle's the guy. I think Brian Battle's very good, tested on the Ultimate Fighter. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but I will say Gilbert Urbina, I don't really hold that win with a lot of weight. Tresean Gore, I don't either. And the quick finish over Takashi Sato. So it's tough to trust either one of these guys. From an underdog standpoint, I think Brian Battle's one of the best on the slate. A huge guy, hits really hard for the welterweight division. And he's a gamer. Probably has the better cardio of the two. So with all that being said, like you'd think I'd be picking Brian Battle here, but I just think that Fakhretdinov gets in top position and just kind of wins minutes. So I'm going to be picking Fakhretdinov at 8,300, but clearly circling this fight again. And other fights I'm planting my flag, like Arman Tsarukyan, I'm planting the flag on that one. Not so much with this matchup. It's more of a mix and match for me.
Next up, we got a matchup between David Dvorak and Manel Kape. Kape minus 260 plus 210 for Dvorak, 9,100 for Kape over on DK, 7,100 for Dvorak, and then 20 and 11 over there on FanDuel. Manel Kape, I mean, man, I've been super high on this guy since he came into the UFC from Ryzen. The only thing that concerns me from a DFS perspective on this matchup is low volume from each guy.
Yeah, I agree. Manel Kape's a guy I'm planting my flag on getting a victory. I do think that within the flyweight division, it comes down to activity. And sometimes Manel Kape's okay with letting his opponents dictate the pace of the fight, which could turn out to bite him in the backside eventually. I mean, it kind of did already against Alexandre Pantoja, who he debuted against. Isn't that ridiculous? And then Mateusz Nicolau. Mateusz Nicolau is very, very good. So, kind of seeing how both of these fighters fought him, you saw David Dvorak get dropped and hurt against Mateusz Nicolau, who just picked up a beautiful win. So I think, personally, Manel Kape possesses the power, the striking skills the defensive wrestling to keep this on the feet and win out on exchanges against David Dvorak. I think Dvorak's probably going to throw more. He threw 110 at Matheus Nicolau, landed only 39. He threw 146 at Jordan Espinoza, landed only 68. So, like, I don't really think that he's going to be able to find Manel Kape, whereas Manel Kape, whenever he chooses to throw the combinations, I think he can crack, hurt, drop David Dvorak en route to a decisive victory. But similar to women's MMA, Jason, like flyweight MMA, yeah, on any given day, work rate wins out. So we could see a Dvorak upset, but I'm planting my flag on Manel Kape. I think he's going to walk away with a victory, but not one of my favorite salaries at 9,100.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I do like Manel Kape there. The price point does scare me from a DFS perspective. Then our opening matchup of the night, you got Journey Newsom, a plus 250 betting underdog here, taking on Sergey at minus 310, 9,300 for Sergey, 6,900 for Journey. 22-9 there over on FanDuel. I was actually supposed to talk to Journey a couple weeks ago, but unfortunately that one just didn't come together. Sergey here, I mean, look, there's a reason he's a 3-1 betting favorite. I like him in the spot. Once again, the price point, I just go, oh God, does he pay off the price point?
Yeah, I mean, like, this whole card is kind of riddled with people you want to have trust in, but they've kind of ruined that trust in the past. And, volatility kind of surrounds a lot of these matchups. That's where, me believing in skill set in like Arman Tsarukyan, guy that I can just like confidently say I have some faith with him. Other fighters on this card, if they do the correct things, yes, they could have massive scores. I think that Sergey Morozov has fought better competition than Journey Newson, despite Journey Newson having skills in every department. Newson hits really hard for the division, has really solid Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, can incorporate good wrestling. I have this gut feeling he gets ragdolled, though, against his opponent in Sergey Morozov. When you have Morozov debut against Umar Nurmagomedov, you saw the glimpses of potential in that matchup, but he followed it up against Khalid Taha when he went 6 of 16 in the takedown department, scored only 105 despite landing 6 takedowns. But I think this could be a situation where at 9,300, his best path to victory is testing the chin of Journey Newson, but also kind of just outworking him. And I think the work rate of Morozov is going to win out here as long as he can avoid the big shots, because he does not seem to be the most durable fighter out there. But I'm pretty confident that Morozov's going to walk away with the victory at 9,300. Going to sprinkle in some Journey Newson 6,900 plays, but for the most part, I'm expecting a Morozov decisive victory.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the over 2 takedown prop that PrizePicks has on Sergey there. Of course, you got any questions, line those up in chat right now. We're going to get to those here in a moment. Let's get our straight up fight picks. These are non-DFS related. Main event, I will go Jared Cannonier.
I'm going Cannonier.
Co-main event, give me the favorite in Tsarukyan.
Tsarukyan.
I will take Albazi over Costa.
Albazi.
Gotta go with my guy, Juicy J.
Yeah, I'm going to go Erosa. Don't trust him, though.
This is a tough one for me between Drew Dober and Bobby Green. It's a coin flip fight for me. Oh, man.
I'm going Bobby Green.
I really want to say Bobby Green. I'll go Bobby Green, but, man, I think the fight's really close. Hate to go against my guy, Cody Brundage, but I got to. Michal Oleksiejczuk.
Yeah, Oleksiejczuk for me, too.
This next one's a tough one for me because it all depends on how it plays out. I think the smart money is to go with Cheyanne, but I'm concerned that she just gets taken down and McKenna grinds her way to a 15-minute decision.
Yeah, good. I mean, legitimate concerns. I'm still going to go with Vlismas here.
I like Jake Matthews. I think he utilizes grappling to get to win over Semelsberger.
Yeah, Jake Matthews.
Kakharamonov, I like him against Nurmagomedov.
Tough fight, but I'm going Kakharamonov.
You brought up great points about why I could be concerned about Rafa Garcia with the striking, but I'm still going to go Garcia.
Yeah, same. I'm going to go Garcia. If Maheshate goes out there and knocks out Rafa Garcia, now I can believe. It's just like very difficult to find fight tape on Maheshate to begin with. And Rafa has been in there despite my concerns. I'm still going to go Rafa.
Yeah. I'm going to go Hanat just because of the takedown upside over Brian.
Yeah, Hanat Fakhreddinov for me too.
I'll go Manel Kape.
Manel Kopp.
And I will go Sergey.
Sergey Morozov. Yeah, I mean, from like a betting perspective, something
Yeah.
that I think you have to be very careful for. More about finding the correct punt play this week than it is like quality underdogs outside of the main event.
Get to some of these questions that came in a little earlier from Ty. First off, he goes, who are the cash locks? We all know you love that L word. Cash locks this week for me.
It's hard, man.
I mean, there's fighters on this card that I love the upside, or I love kind of what may be a quote unquote floor for them. I mean, like, part of this also comes down to a roster construction situation. Like, I look at Oleksiejczuk. I mean, you could say that fight is kind of a fight you might need to prioritize because of the volatility. If I was going to say if I'm where I'm starting building lineups, if I'm looking at that top end, it might be Oleksiejczuk, maybe the one I would start with. If I'm trying to start a lineup with a 9,000 fighter.
Yeah, it makes sense. For me, number one cash play is Jared Cannonier. 5-round aspect. I think it's a close fight. I think that he's proven to be durable, and he's proven to, contend with some of the best already. Don't have many question marks surrounding him. And I have still some questions about Sean Strickland. So if this goes 25 minutes, even in a loss, I think that you're getting some points rather than no points in a volatile matchup with other fights.
Favorite GPP underdogs for DFS. So Jared Cannonier, I mean, 7,700.
Yep.
He's one that sticks out to me. Bobby Green's more of a cash play for me. Cory McKenna, takedown upside, but obviously she's got to be able to utilize that takedown. I do like Saidyokub at 8,000. I mean, he's not technically underdog in that one. Those are kind of the underdogs that stick out to me the most.
Yeah, I mean, Saidyokub Kakharamonov makes a ton of sense from the salary. Maheshate seems to be everybody's darling. I mean, I'm going to get to him, but as far as having faith, I'd much rather have faith in Bobby Green to win a close decision than, possibly have a single-digit performer. So Bobby Green, like, I know people don't want to play him in GPPs. Certain matchups I think can bring out the best of him. I'm going to do it. I'm going to play him in GPPs. I really am, because I think that if he does the correct thing, he could have a very surprising score over 90 points.
And maybe he's that shocking takedown guy. Maybe, it's like a minute and a half, 2 minutes left in a round, and he just sees the opportunity, and he says, you know what? Because if you're Drew Dober, you got to imagine your mindset has got to be, he's going to try to take this one to the ground. So maybe that's something to kind of think about there. I mean, not necessarily the guy that you think about takedowns. Who do you think will be the most popular 9,000 fighter on DraftKings?
Well, the most popular 9,000 option on DraftKings is going to be Amir Albazi. He just is. I know that the salary is crazy, but the second people hear that he's fighting somebody on short notice, they're just going to plug him in, especially when he's been so dominant. So I'm pretty sure that he's going to be the most popular. Yeah. Second would be Michal Oleksiejczuk, and I'd be pretty surprised if I was wrong on that.
If I was going to rank the 9,000 options, so you've got Albazi, Oleksiejczuk, Sergey, Jake, Manel, and Cheyanne. I would rank them. I know who my top two are. I'm just not sure who I put over one. Oleksiejczuk, because of first round upside, maybe I give him a slight edge over Jake Matthews. So they would be my 1-2. And then the rest of them, I'd probably go Albazi 3, Sergey 4, Kopp 5, Cheyanne 6.
Okay, so for me, my first two is Oleksiejczuk and Morozov. It's kind of like a 1A, 1B. My third would be Albazi. My fourth would be Jake Matthews. Just because I think that, we have seen patient Jake Matthews in the past to sit there and just trade and, not rush it. He's composed, and composed fighters sometimes don't, break the slate. 5 would be Manel Kopp, and 6 would be Cheyanne Vlismas.
Yeah. Does Brundage deserve a sprinkle in a 20 max just in case he gets the takedowns? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
I'm doing it.
I would not say like. I think if you're using an optimizer to build those lineups, if you start getting 30% or more of Brundage, that's when I think you got to kind of
that's
concern. I would probably say I wouldn't. I mean, and look, I have not done any lineups yet. I actually need a reserve. I need a reserve contest here today. But I would think that I'll probably be in the 20 to 25% range on Cody, and probably closer to 20 than 25.
I think that I'll be probably in the 20%. But I kind of evenly distribute some of my long shots. I don't know, man. I much rather just take some shots on some cheaper people. Like Brundage is cheap, but so is like Alessandro, Costa. Like I don't think we've seen too many fighters at 6,600. 6,600 is cheap, man. Like that is so cheap.
I think the thing you brought up the point of, maybe potentially finding a losing fighter. Like, if you look at, let's just say from 7,300 and below, Ismagulov is 7,300. Could go 15 minutes. Could have a Costa 6,000. Brundage 68. The reason what scares you about Brundage is high volatility. That's just not a fight I expect to go 15 minutes. McKenna, 7,200. I've talked about the takedown upside there. Semelsberger, 7,000. Man, he's got to stop the takedowns. I just don't know if he can do that. Then you got Dvorak and Journey Newsom.
Yeah, so for me, when I'm punting, sometimes you're not punting for finishers, right? Well, yes and no. Sometimes I'm searching for finishers, quick finishers. The quick finishers under 7,300 that I would be looking at would be Cody, Brundage, and Semelsberger. Now, I think the likelihood of them finding a finish is pretty slim. So my next thought process is, okay, 7,300 and below, who are the best fighters within that range to perform well in the decision? So that's kind of like where I like to think and put my mind in, like Alessandro, Costa, so cheap, getting there. Cody, Brundage, wrestling, getting there. Even though I don't think that goes the distance. Dvorak and McKenna. So like the three I would choose for decision would be like McKenna, Dvorak, and Costa. Like I think that they have pretty high floors for what their salaries represent.
Next up says, who are the three with the highest DFS ceilings, and which fighters who are favorites are you going to be lightest on in GPPs? All right, so as I mentioned, I haven't done any lines, but here's who I would imagine that I will be light on. Cheyanne, just because of, I just think if she wins, she sticks on the outside, and she's going to need knockdowns. But I'll still get to her. Manel Kopp, I think I'll be a little under the field on, just because of the low volume is what concerns me about Manel Kopp. In terms of highest ceilings, Cannonier, potentially because of the knockout upside. But then I started looking at Oleksiejczuk first round upside. Look at Saidyokub. I look at Hanat, and those are and Sergey, and those are because of the takedown upsides.
Yeah, so who I'm going to be light on is going to be Cheyanne, Vlismas, and Amir Albazi. And not because I don't think Amir wins. I think that he wins. It's just the price is restrictive, and he could score 120 or more, but I don't know. I think that he's going to score lower 100s. I'm going to get to him, but it seems like the masses are going to be flocking to that, and I kind of just want to pivot elsewhere. Cheyanne, Vlismas is just a fight that I'm not really prioritizing. Three fighters that I think have massive ceilings. It's going to be Oleksiejczuk, Morozov, and Tsarukyan. Three fighters that I really like as far as like an upside standpoint. They all have skills to really just get fantasy points for us.
Rady asking Bobby Green cash play. Yeah.
Baby.
I'm all about Bobby Green as a cash play.
All about Bobby Green, anything play. I don't think that Drew Dober knocks him out. He could be one of the first guys ever, if not the first guy ever, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I want to say Dustin Poirier is the last one to knock out Bobby Green.
Oh, yes. Good one. Yep. But I don't.
And I
I
want
don't know.
to say before that it was. Oh, what was the last one before?
Dustin's a stud, though.
Yeah, I mean the Dustin one. Excuse me, Bobby Green got the TKO win against Ally Quinta. That was his first TKO win since 2013 against James Krause. In terms of Bobby Green's been knocked out 3 times in his career. Islam Makhachev, Dustin Poirier, and Tim Means. The Tim Means you got to go back to 2010 in King of the Cage.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even view the Makhachev one as a knockout. I mean,
yeah, it's ground.
It was just like a merciful stoppage. That's all it really was. But you can go back and say that on a lot of people. But I don't know. He just seems like a guy that's going to be somebody I'm going to have, more exposure to than what the people are doing.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, we'll be live on Stochastic tomorrow. By that point, I'll have done all my lineups, so I'll know exactly what my exposures are going to be. I mean, there's just, there'll be some fights I'm going to say, I just kind of want a little less on those fights than some of the other fights. Of course, we appreciate everyone tuning in here. Of course, subscribe to the channel. We do appreciate that. As I mentioned, I will get the show up on the podcasting platforms. We'll tweet out the links there. Kevin says, what are the fights you all think should happen next year? That would be Blockbuster Chimaev versus ? Who else? I mean, look, blockbuster fight, Conor McGregor against anybody will be a big fight. Chimaev, man, there's a lot of fights I think that could be quote unquote blockbuster fights for Chimaev.
I just want Chimaev to fight. I don't care who. Just get him in there. Just get him in there. I think the Colby Covington one makes a ton of sense. I don't think it happens. I think they were going to see like a Chimaev, Derek Brunson. I don't know. I don't know why that kind of sticks out to something weird like that.
I mean, Jones versus Ngannou potentially in March could be another blockbuster fight. We'll see what happens there. Randy, I appreciate that we can help your workday go a little bit faster for you, man. Do appreciate you tuning in. I'm trying to think of other big fights that would stick out to me.
Brandon Moreno and Figueiredo going to fight for the 12,000th time. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see the Makhachev and Volkanovski fight.
Yeah, that's. I don't know how much that's going to really draw people though. Yeah, I'm kind of looking at the rankings just to see what fights I think that would be huge draws. If Sean O'Malley fights for the title next, it's going to be a draw because of Sean O'Malley.
Cejudo, something. Who knows? He needs to go away. He's so annoying. But
if Nunez versus Pena, the trilogy matchup happens, I think that's another one.
I think the most compelling is what happens with Shevchenko. Who does she defend against next? What are the next couple things? You know what I mean? Like, I love Shevchenko a lot, and every fighter's nipping at her heels, and I can't wait to watch her perform next year.
What's your guys' bold prediction for next year? Like someone we don't see becoming champion or something. Those are always tough ones for me.
Chimaev.
My co-host Daniel brought this up the other day, and it was like, who is the UFC light heavyweight champion 12 months from now?
Yeah, I know. I really liked Yuri Prochazka, but man, who knows what the heck's going on with his injury? So
yeah, he's had major shoulder injury. I mean, I said I would vote Ankalaev. To me, I think maybe that's the safe route to go. By the way,
he might not fight in the UFC anymore. Who knows?
Dude, I talked about this on Wednesday night. What a crazy hour or so for Ankalaev on Saturday night.
Horrible.
You walk into the cage. You know what? 25 minutes are over. You feel confident that you're the new UFC light heavyweight champion. Scores red. You're not the light heavyweight champion. Then you learn you're not even getting the next title shot. And who knows? His next fight may not be even a title shot. Like you talking about and then kudos to Anthony Smith on the desk to literally learn 3 seconds before they announce it and to be very professional up there. Man, that was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that division is a disaster right now. It really is. Like, yuck.
Yeah, I mean, so, someone mentioned Jamal Hill. Maybe
Got to get past Glover first. He does that, then then we'll see. But
don't go to the ground, Jamal. Do not go to the ground.
No, sir.
And Jamal, just hat tip here: if you happen to win, have some good security around you in Rio.
Yeah.
Have some good security around you in Rio. So.
Yeah, I just got to see my boy Chimaev fight. I don't really care. And Kevin, I like Volkanovski's chances a lot more than the public. I truthfully do. So I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting matchup. And I'll tell you, a under-the-radar banger to start the year. February 4th, Bellator. Your guy, Brandon Ward, and Sabah Hamasi. That is all caps banger. Yeah. If if you have not watched either one of those two guys, that's got potential banger written all over between those two.
Absolutely,
guys.
Man.
I know how you side on that one. I know how you side on that one, but that is potential. That's a banger alert in terms of that one. But Pete, anything else you want to mention before we got here?
No, I just want to say thanks for the support, guys. If you wouldn't mind subscribing to the channel, we're here every UFC fight week. In addition to that, we'll be putting out content for PFL, Bellator, Dana White Contender Series, all that stuff. So we really appreciate the support. You guys are great. Hit the like button for us. And next, we will be on Stochastic for Live Before Lock on Saturdays, leading up to each UFC card. So thanks again, guys.
Yeah, you can catch us over there tomorrow at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll be live for 1 hour, breaking down this fight card, answering any questions that you do have. Of course, we'll get this show up on the podcast channels. If you want to take advantage of that, just search Fight HQ. I know the podcast channel is already there, so we'll put that over there. So appreciate everyone tuning in for the Fight HQ preview for UFC Vegas number 66.